Welcome back to LaughLines and LifeLines Podcast. Well, we are here again in
our home, our
natural
spot.
Environment.
Well, not our OG spot, I guess. The
kind
OG spot was
one
your
of our
house.
OG spots.
That's
yeah.
crazy that we started in house. That's
Episode
weird.
14, guys. 14. We've
Dang.
done this 14 times.
Whoa.
Yeah, so last week was super fun. Thank you everyone
fun.
for watching. It'll be up on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify this week.
The
so
audio
it'll,
platforms.
yeah, it'll be back on, or it'll be there on Monday. So our first episode with a guest.
Yeah, it was so fun. We just sat
fun.
down and I was like, I kind of miss having a third person.
I know.
I mean, she's fine, but
Oh, I'm fine, guys.
she's just fine.
I'm just fine.
If you can't tell, we're matching.
We are matching.
What's
This
new?
happens so often.
Literally
It's
every
it's
Sunday.
hard to even like describe.
She walked in because I'm wearing a purple shirt and a black dress, and she walked in and I was like, because I mean her thing is gray, but in the sanctuary it looked purplish gray. It looked a little bit more purple under the sanctuary lights,
Yeah,
and
so
she's
if you
wearing a black
can't tell,
dress.
Yeah,
And I was like, I looked at her. I said,
really.
like, showed us our outfits, and she
Every
was
time.
like, "Oh, for Pete's sake!" Every week.
Doesn't even like surprise me at this
No,
point.
it's just I just laugh every time.
The first few times it was really funny. Like, oh, I can't believe it happened. Now it's just like
Now it's just like, okay.
a normal thing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
All
so
that
we
to say.
can, yeah, all that to
Life
say. We're gonna jump into our topic today, which is life before and after accepting Christ into our life,
Yeah.
in our lives, our experiences with that,
Mhm.
where we were before and where we are now, or after, because like I'm in a completely different place than I
Yeah.
was when I came to Christ.
Oh yeah.
And obviously before that. So,
Right.
do you have any like opening statements or where you want to start?
I just have notes for just before, just kind of before and at, like just what I was feeling, what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm down to start wherever.
Go ahead.
Start however.
Yeah.
So I mean, to start, like my phone's gonna keep turning off. Pause. To start, like I've technically always had Christ, but we all know
Right.
it's not really like that.
Very different. Yeah.
Like I was baptized when I was a baby, raised going to church here every week, and then that fell off the face of the earth and everything went to crap. But like during that time, like I remember, and it's even so weird to like think about that being me. Like my junior year of high school, I was the saddest person I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have pictures, videos of myself just a mess. Like I was
Right.
just crying all the time. I was so sad. It just doesn't even feel like me, like looking back.
Yeah.
Like I
Just go, honey.
okay, well. 1, 2, 3.
Bye, Dad.
My dad. That's gonna pick up. But yeah, just I think
Really, Everly.
I think just with like the COVID, the
The
pandemic.
Yeah.
The pandemic threw me for a loop.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much too social to be locked in my house, and I think we've touched on this a little bit before, but I hated it.
I loved it.
I know. Hated it. I'm way too social to be by myself, and then that also meant, bless both of their hearts, I was stuck with both my parents together under one roof when they didn't really like each other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not the best. And yeah, so like junior year of high school, before my parents got divorced, but when they probably should have been divorced,
Right.
it was just rough.
Mm-hmm.
And we had just moved, and there was just so much happening. And when I was writing my notes earlier, like the only thing I could think of was like how I felt in those moments being so sad was that I was lonely, even though I had probably the most friends
Surrounding
in my high
people.
school class. And it all just like looking back on it, that whole part of my life is like tinted black. Like it's just like it's literally dark. There was no light, there was no brightness, like there was no, like I didn't have anything to not to live for. Obviously I had stuff to live for. It never got that bad, praise God, but it was just dark and it was heavy, and I was sad all the time because you know, my feelings and my joy and my sadness all came from my circumstances. It was, or what someone said about me, or what someone said to someone else, or whatever happened at home, or like everything good and bad came from the world, quite frankly. And there was nothing
and that got its grip
substantial
on you.
Yeah. And I was just depressed. I was sad. I was crying all the time. I was not, like, knowing myself now and seeing who I am now, it's crazy to like look back on that.
Right.
But and I remember like how how it all seems black, kind of looking back, like then I can see like when it all started to shift, and it was still like kind of dark. It was kind of lonely because for a while it was just me. Yeah. Like I was doing things on my own. I was coming to church by myself. I was getting involved in the team by myself. But so it was kind of in my head. I don't know why I'm thinking of this in colors, but it's just how it's making sense to me. Is it was like purple kind of, but like a dark purple, like sunrise, sunset kind of situation where it's like, okay, this is kind of scary. I'm still kind of alone,
but the light's
by myself.
Through.
Yes. I mean, literally and figuratively. And then just looking at where I am now, like I think the biggest blessing of coming to Christ is never feeling lonely. Yeah. Not never. That's a strong. Right. Very rarely feeling lonely. And just the difference in community I have. Like just people I surround myself now are believers, and they know the truth, and they know the word, and they don't let the world skew what they live by, how they act, why they do what they do, why they say what they say. I have the best community that I've ever had in my life. Right. Since coming to Christ. And like coming to Christ on purpose and like by myself too, like makes
on your own free will.
Yeah.
Or on your own will.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a big difference too, because like I said, I've always had Christ because I was baptized when I was little. Of course. But, it's different. I can relate to that. Yeah. Right. But now in my phone, I just wrote, like bright yellow, thinking in colors. Like now is just bright yellow. Like, yes, there's still crap that happens. Absolutely. There's still sadness and sorrow and pain and questioning, like, why is this happening? Or what am I supposed to do, God? Or just show me something. But it's all yellow. I know I have someone in my corner. I'm not lonely. Like, sometimes if I'm like feeling lonely, I'll be like, hey God, what's up? Like I'll just sit there at my kitchen table, be like, hey, and just talk. Like, and like on my drives home, it's like if I don't want to have music going, I'm just talking to him. Yeah. I'm like, hey King. The other day I got into an argument with him for real. I was like, I mean, we can talk about this off camera too, but I was just like, God, we've had the episodes about the rapture and all of that. And I was talking to him. I'm like, God, I just need something. I was like, Lord, I love you. I know you have a good plan for me. And that's like a shift in itself, like knowing and like internalizing now that I know Christ, that there is something for me. Absolutely. There is someone for me. Purpose. There is a purpose in my life. Like I know that he has that covered. But I said, God, I'm getting tired. Yeah. I'm getting tired of being alone. Not alone, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And just said, God, just send me something. And then the next day he was like, and I was like, okay. Really? But
I hear you.
Yeah. But just like that constant companion is all that to say. Just constant companion to laugh with, cry with, argue with, like, and it's just the shift of mindset and the shift of living, knowing that there truly is something there. And like there is substance, there is substance, and there's purpose in and for my life. Is just something like I knew I had stuff to live for before, but it was just like
now it's clear.
Yeah. And like my joy, my sorrow, my sadness, my pain, like it's all rooted in him, which can sound weird when I'm talking about like bad stuff, but
it's part of it though.
Right. Exactly.
Good without the bad.
Exactly. And it's like my joy isn't necessarily, I mean, I'm a human. Obviously I'm going to get sad when something happens or going to be like, really, when people do stuff. But like at the root of it, my joy is not my happiness and my like demeanor is no longer rooted in the world
standards. And yeah.
And now it's like, now I have that mindset switch again. Like if something, you know, crap happens and you're like, well, what are you teaching me? Why are you putting this here? What are you showing me?
What am I supposed to see?
Right.
I ask them that all the time.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
What is a lesson here? Because there's always a lesson, no matter what.
You can be down in the dumps. You're thinking everything's over, but there's something that he wants you to see. And that is just one of the biggest things now, knowing him and, you know, interacting with him every day. It's like, okay, I know that you're not just giving me this circumstance for
just because you want us to suffer.
Right. Yeah. There's always a bigger plan.
Yeah.
So that's what I have to start. And then we can bounce back and forth after you. Yeah.
So like I have a lot of notes here. Thank you, ChatGPT, for putting these in.
She showed up today and I was like, well, how do you have so many notes? She's like, ChatGPT. I was like,
it just helps me. Like sometimes I find it hard. It's funny because like we're on a podcast, but I find it hard to articulate my feelings sometimes.
Yeah.
Or my thoughts into words and conversation. So I asked ChatGPT, like, okay, here's what I want to say. Please elaborate on it. Like, help me articulate this.
Yeah.
So that's why I have a lot of notes. And I'm not going to use all of them, but like it just helps me. I get anxiety about not being able to converse, you know, and make sense.
Yeah, just like saying things.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes I do that, but I don't really care. I just say things.
Right.
Like hopefully I ended the circle at some point.
Yeah,
Probably not.
Exactly. Yeah, so my life before Christ, you know, it was most of my life. And much like you, I was baptized as a baby, you know, did that whole thing. We went to church growing up and all that stuff. And you guys all know this from my testimony and stuff. But I really view that as my life before Christ because life opened up when I came to Christ. And
it like doesn't feel like life.
No. And that's
exactly
what I wanted to
saying.
touch on. That's what I wanted to touch on. Like you talk about colors. It's so funny that you said that because what I was going to talk about was the darkness.
Okay. This
like
is what we're talking about.
That's the number one point that I wanted to touch on is the darkness that was my life. I spent the majority of it in darkness, in sadness. I look back at my childhood because I have PTSD, like diagnosed PTSD and trauma that like I don't have very many memories of my childhood. Any good memories?
Because you like block them, the trauma response. Like, block them out. Yeah.
And it's weird because like sometimes I'll have flashbacks of certain times. You know my brothers will mention something like, oh, this happened when we were kids. And like, sometimes I'll be like, oh yeah.
But you have
I have no recollection of it. And that it used to bother me a lot more because I was in a much more fragile mental state. But things were very dark from a very young age. So like, that's all I ever knew.
Right. You didn't know that there could be something else.
Yeah. And I didn't know what was lying ahead of me. And I just thought, you know, not only did I want to mention the darkness, but I really wanted to talk about the abyss, the point, the purpose of life.
Yeah.
Because for a good 25 years, truly 25 years, I didn't know what the point of life was. Not that I was like suicidal or anything like that.
Right.
And I thank God that I've never struggled with that. But I know people who have, and I know people who really struggle with that. But that's what I see. I'm finding it hard to articulate. I remember living my life and finding coping mechanisms that were not healthy.
Right.
You know, I was in a marriage that was not working. And this is all leading up to when I decided to surrender to Christ.
Yeah.
I was, and again, I touched on this in my testimony episode, but I was doing all the things because I didn't know what the point of life was, or there was no goal. There was no, like, what was I working towards?
Right.
So, like, I just followed what everybody else was doing.
Went through the motions, did what you thought. Yeah.
I lived a life full of masks. You know, that back when I was in a recovery program, that was, like, eventually I was in, like, a leadership position. So, like, I would talk to all the new people coming in. And that was part of my testimony, because you had to have like a 5-minute testimony, which I never stuck to, because how do you put a testimony into 5 minutes? But but I tried. And that's what my testimony was about, was masks. That's what I lived for 28 years actually. And I just followed what everybody else was doing. And there was just, behind these eyes, I was a shell. You know, that's how I describe it to people. I was a shell of a person. When I see pictures before Christ of myself, or experiences, or, you know, sometimes I get sucked into the guilt of before, when my daughter was born, because that was before Christ for me. And everything is just a blur. Like, I know things when you first have children are a blur, but I was struggling with postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, on top of everything else. And I truly don't know how I did it, because I don't ever want to know a life again without Christ. I don't know how I did it. And like, I wasn't a present mom. I wasn't, you know, a good wife. You know, our marriage was doomed to begin with, but that's a whole other story. And that's okay. Like, our story is what it is. And there's things that in my new marriage that I'm working through because of my old marriage. But the difference is that I'm doing it with Christ now, and that's all I'll ever need. And I remember leading up to my surrender. I'm usually really good with dates, but I don't remember quite the date. I remember exactly where I was when I surrendered to Christ. It's gonna make me emotional. But in my notes I put, like, you know, what were you feeling? What was that moment? It was a culmination of every traumatic event in my life. I just stopped fighting. I put it down at the feet of Christ. I put everything that I was fighting to maintain, if that makes sense. At the feet of Christ. And I understood it. I was fighting it for a good couple years, because my marriage was ending. It was a very, again, traumatic time, very troubled time for me. I was leaning towards, you know, I never did drugs, and I never did anything like that. I was never a drinker, but I had other coping mechanisms that were not healthy. And that was detrimental to my marriage. That wasn't I take full my responsibility in my marriage ending. But that's not why my marriage ended. My marriage ended because it was supposed to end. And I see it for what it is now. At the time, I hung on to that thing with a death grip. Because I thought that's what my personality was. I thought that's what my purpose in life was.
I mean, it was all you'd known since you were
14,
15. Yep.
Because he's a good man. He made mistakes too. But he's a good man. He's a good father. But we had no business getting married when we did. We got married when I was 19 years old. I was a baby.
Yeah.
Imagine being married right now.
Nope.
No.
Don't want to.
No.
Thank you, next.
I will never, I don't care how close you are with Christ. In my opinion, in my experience, well, I take that back. I support people who get married at a young age when Christ is the center of their marriage. But Christ was nowhere near the center of my marriage.
Right.
And we had no business getting married at that age. But there was circumstances. I wasn't pregnant or anything, but he was in the army.
Yeah.
And he was deploying, and like that's just
what you do.
the way it happened.
Yeah.
And that's what you do. And when you're young and in love, and I didn't know any better because I was a lost human being. And I thought that he was the end all be all, and he was my God, and he was my savior, and he was all this stuff. But when I was, fast forward 10 years, when all of that was slipping through my hands, had I known how lost that feeling would be,
Yeah.
like that paled in comparison to how I felt before. But with all that being said, for the first time in my life, my eyes were actually opened. Not childbirth didn't do that to me, not losing my marriage, or not marriage, not terrible things, not happy things, nothing touches what God brings to your life, to that surrender.
Yep.
Because I just didn't want to fight anymore. I didn't want to struggle to have peace. I didn't know what peace was before.
Yep.
That surpasses any and all understanding, because that's truly, it's hard. You can't even put it into words.
Yeah.
And I thank God, and I will give the Lord, I have given the Lord my life, and I laid everything at his feet. Doesn't mean I still don't struggle with things. I do.
Right.
There's things in my marriage now. This is what I wanted to touch on. There's things in my marriage now that are coming out because of my first marriage, and I'm working on it.
Yep.
And there's still things that come up and that I struggle with, and God doesn't, I used to think for the longest time, like, oh, God doesn't want me. He doesn't. I don't deserve him. I don't deserve that joy. I don't deserve. Yeah. I don't,
I mean, we really don't.
No, we don't.
No.
Absolutely. But I remember thinking so many times and for so long that, I'll just turn my life around first, and then I'll go to church.
We talk about this whole time.
And then I'll do all the things and accept God, and that's when he'll want me.
Right. It's like that analogy our pastor Charlie always says, like, you don't shower when you already are clean. Like, you shower when you're dirty, like, you don't have to get clean before you get into the shower. You don't go to the doctor when you're healthy.
Yeah.
You go to the doctor when you're sick.
Yep.
Yep.
And I was one of those people. And, I thank God for those years, walking in the abyss, for those years of being so lost that I didn't even realize it. And because now I get to share my story, and I get to help those who are in the abyss, hopefully.
Not hopefully you're in the abyss. Hopefully she helped you.
Yeah, no, hopefully I can
in
help
the abyss,
you.
Hopefully.
Yeah, no. Hopefully I can help people come out of the abyss, and show them that there's hope beyond the hurt. There's hope beyond the pain. There's hope beyond trauma, and there is light. There's light beyond the darkness. Yeah. And I get to show my daughters that a life full of Christ is the only life worth living. And I get to have a marriage that's centered around Christ, and I my husband and I have had a very interesting story. And maybe we'll get into that someday, maybe not. But I get to have a life that I didn't know was possible.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
I get to have a marriage now that's rooted in Christ, and that's something that I don't have to worry about.
Yeah.
Like when I was married before, I remember worrying, what's the point? What's the,
like, what
are we
am I
working
doing
towards?
this for?
What,
Yeah.
like, I just remember that there was no substance there.
Yeah. Like, is there an end goal to this? Or are we just...
Yep.
Anybody
exactly.
else confused?
Yeah.
What's going on?
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
And I don't have to live that way anymore. And I struggle with depression. I struggle with anxiety, and it's something that I work on every single day. But I know that God has given me this life to bring glory to him in any way that I can. And there's things that I'll always be working on.
Right.
But it's what God's showing me. It's what God is showing me through this struggle, how to bring glory to him. And in turn, I get to teach my daughters what it's like to maintain that joy.
Right.
Hopefully. Like, I'm trying.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
You know, I don't know what I'm doing.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. I don't know what I'm doing, though. I'm clueless.
Husband looks over.
Yeah. Like, I really, though, I don't know what I'm doing. I just know that
he's like, neither do I.
My job is to lead them to Christ. And I think a lot of parents can attest to that.
Here,
a lot of parents who are Christ followers.
Evie.
Do
you love Jesus? Yeah. Do you know Jesus? Is he the best ever? Do you like praying to him? Good job, Mom.
That makes me want to cry.
Test right there.
Now my goals in life are to bring glory to God any way that I possibly can, and that's a lifelong goal. And it's a, sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. It's a different type of goal.
Yeah.
Like before, we're like,
meaningful goal.
I need to get married. I need to have kids. Like, I need to go to work. Like, what am I doing this for? But like, regardless of if any of that happens, like these goals are right here. The goal of bringing glory to God just is constant sailing. Like, there's no, like, it's just, that's always going to be a goal. If I should have said I agree. Anyway.
Yeah. Agreed.
My 2 cents.
So yeah, that basically, I think the theme for this episode is like before and after Christ, darkness versus light.
They're 2 completely different things. And it's not like, I mean, we are 2 different people. We have 2 different stories. She has a more definitive moment. Like, mine was just kind of
gradual.
I look back and I'm like, wow. Like, what a fixer-upper I am. Shoot. Like, girl. Well, yeah, we all are, but it's like, and I've read it online before, like, day by day, everything's the same, but 5 years down the road, it's a completely different life.
Absolutely.
And I think that about watching my sister grow up. Like, every day I see her, she looks the same, but, she obviously grows up, and, like, looking back on my life, like, every day has just been a day. Like, especially now, I go to school, I come here, I go to work, I go to bed, I do it all over again. But I look back, and it's literally 2 different lives.
Night and day.
Yeah. Dark and light. Fighting in peace.
100%. Like, I so often, like, my husband has this picture of me probably when I was at my lowest point. Or one of my lowest points.
He nodded. He was like,
yeah, he does. And he'll show it to me every once in a while. And it's like a gut punch every time, because it takes me back to how lost I was. And I look completely different.
Whoa.
Shell of a person. And like, that makes me, that person, right, I don't recognize.
Me neither. Wow.
And it makes me sad for her.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wish I could just go into that picture and just hug her and say
I think about that all the time.
Coming.
Like thinking back to myself, like sitting by my bedroom door, just sobbing.
Yep.
Just walking down there, like it's gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's something out there.
There is hope.
Yeah.
There is hope beyond whatever you're feeling right now. Hope that you can't even understand.
Yeah.
To this day, I don't understand why God is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just know that he is. And I know that there's purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Purpose for all those nights.
Yeah.
Crying and sobbing and years of the abyss.
Wandering.
I don't know why that word keeps
well, it's
coming
inaccurate. Yeah. You're just walking
That's just
and
what
walking
I feel
and walking
and going and going and
Yeah.
going with no purpose and no point.
Yeah.
Like that's a torture of its own. And nobody deserves to live that way.
No.
Everybody deserves a life in Christ. And I thank God that he allowed me to surrender when he did.
Mm-hmm.
Because his timing is always perfect.
Yep.
Perfect timing. And now I get to be the person I want to be and have the career I want to have be the wife I want to be and the mother I want to be. And I always feel like I'm coming up short, but that's something that I need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the human condition
Oh,
as well.
Yeah.
We're
we're just pounded into us that you can always do more. You can always do something more.
Exactly.
You can always,
Exactly. And as women, you're expected to be a certain way and what society teaches you to be. And my goal as a mother and a woman and a woman of Christ and a friend of Christ is to have my daughters and my friends and whatever look to Christ and not look to society. That's my goal.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anything else?
No. I feel like we covered it all.
I think so.
Yeah.
I probably have 89 more notes,
Well,
but I wouldn't know because
you
my
and
kid has my
ChatGPT.
phone.
This is true.
Yeah. You should try and get like a behind the scenes photo of this right now. Like this is real life. Did you? With Everly? Thank you for watching.
Yes, thank you for listening.
And listening, yes.
However you join us, thank you for being
join
here.
us. Yeah. We'll call it good. We'll see you guys next week. And thank you as always.
Thank you.
To the 29 subscribers.
29.
I thought it was 30, which I think it was 30.
Which one of you?
I know.
Who
Whatever.
is unsubscribing?
I'm gonna guess it was a bot. I'm just gonna roll with
stupid.
that to maintain my mental. Yep. On that note, thank you guys as always.
Thank you, and we'll see you next
time.
week. Goodbye.
Bye.